Today's guest is Ella O'Brien. She is the Small Business Liaison Officer as well as the GWAC CM at SOSi. Ella works to bridge the gap between emerging small enterprises and large industry players, which I'm very interested to hear about. I'm very interested to hear about your whole story. So thanks for joining me today, Ella.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
So for those who don't know you, talk a bit about yourself. Talk about where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. So, Ella O'Brien, I'm currently the Small Business Liaison Officer for SOSi. I'm also on the Technology and Engineering Business Unit as their contracts manager for the GWACs or IDIQ schedules that are under that business unit. Um, so a little bit about me. I started out, traditional route as far as college was concerned. I was gung-ho for accounting. I just knew CPA was the way to go. And I got about 2 years down that path and got a paid internship for one of the top tax firms in Dallas, Fort Worth area. I went to University of Texas. And after a semester of that, I was like, I don't think I want to do taxes. I don't think this is the way to go. Um, and I kind of was at like a crossroads. It was like, okay, pick something else, see if you can maybe somehow parlay these 2 years of accounting classes into something. Or, just kind of figure out what you want to do with your life at this point if CPA is not where we're going. So I went to the guidance counselor and I'm like, I know I'm 2 years in, but I've now decided I don't know what I want to do. And just happened to be in that moment at the guidance counselor office, contracting officer. I'd never heard of contracts, didn't know anything about it. And she said, I think I have an idea of how you can parlay those 2 years of accounting into something else with minimal, extra classes and things like that. Let me take you to lunch. So 21-year-old college student, free lunch sounded amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
sign me up. So I went to lunch with her and she told me all about contracts and contracting. And then back then there weren't any degree programs for contracts. Um, there was this department called the Interdisciplinary Studies Department that mostly worked with people in the tech and science area where there's marine programs, there's biology programs. Someone wants to be a marine biologist, we'll bring those two programs together for them under interdisciplinary studies.
Hmm.
So that's how I wind up with a degree in contracts management for my bachelor's. Um, the contracting officer got with the guidance counselor and they put together a degree plan for me and I followed through and they were like I came in right after the English folks at graduation, so you had 4 rows of English folks and then there's one person for contracts management. So degree in contracts management. So it's been a passion, contracts management. And I just knew that's where I was going and what I was doing. And then I kind of fell into the compliance and the small business side of it.
Hmm.
Um, just, as I'm going down the contracts path, oh, we need this, we need to go for ISO, we need to get this compliance thing done. Who's monitoring this? Can you pick that up? And so I kind of just fell into the small business advocacy side. Um, but it inspired me. It inspired me to be an entrepreneur. It inspired me to learn more about people's businesses, learn more about their whys, and see how I could help. How can I help them, level up on their business? How could I help my firm find value in these small firms? And how do I create win-wins for both parties? So it became a new passion. So I went from accounting to contracts to small business advocacy, but I'm extremely happy where I landed.
That's great.
So kind of a little bit about me and the backstory.
Yeah, so I'm curious, because I live in the DC area. How did you end up in Texas? Were you from Texas originally?
No, I was a Navy wife.
Ah,
Yeah. So I was a Navy wife. We moved around. He was stationed for a little bit at Bowling, Anacostia, and he deployed, and so I just stayed. Um,
Okay.
Divorced, and I just stayed.
Okay, okay.
And that's
Wow,
kind of
okay.
how it happened. I just kind of happened here. I still have no family here, but it gives me a reason to travel. So there's that.
Well, there's all the small businesses you've helped. They're your family.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So, when you talk about kind of, the advocacy for small businesses, I'm just curious, what are the kinds of things that you do for them?
Sure. So depending on the firm, there's the mentor protege program where you kind of help assist them with different aspects of their business. Um, I also help when there's, just little things like, hey, like last week I had a company call like, hey, we need payroll. We need someone to help out with payroll. Do you know anybody? I'm like, yeah, I know people. Here's a few people can help you out on that path. Or hey, we need to get this certification. We don't even know where to begin. Or like we heard about Apex accelerators, but do you have a PLC for those? Or
Hmm.
how do I, what's the website? Where do I, get in touch with that? Or, we're looking for other funding avenues. Do you know anyone doing grant writing? Do you know any VCs? So just kind of networking my right way around the DMV and meeting people and kind of being that hub that people can go to when they're looking for different pieces or problem solving for their small businesses.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I love that there's somebody who does that. And then there are answers to be had because you're right. Small business owners are first and foremost, they're, as an entrepreneur, they had an idea of something they wanted to do, and then the business side of it tackles them.
Right.
And so I love that there's a place they can go for that help and knowledge. So wow, I love it. So as you've kind of gone through your career, you've been a few places, you've done a few different types of things. When you look back, what's something you kind of go, man, I wish it didn't have to be done that way. And I'm going to caveat it to say you and I today may not have a better way uh, for it to be done, but we can generate some conversation, hopefully, and some thought for somebody who is in a position to make a change. When you look out there, what's something you go, that could be better?
Okay. So I think the internal education within the large firms around small business advocacy and supplier diversity, I think depending on the business, some businesses get it, other businesses have no clue and they're checking a box. Hey, our contract says we need to have a person that's dedicated to, small business programs. So let's check that box and we'll assign that to someone and they'll figure it out. They'll submit these semi-annual compliance reports and we're good. The box is checked, right? And other firms really get it and they're looking at the unique solutions that the small businesses can bring to the table. They're looking at, you know um, maybe they're a little bit more nimble than the large can be in getting in certain areas, kind of their points of contact within different organizations and who they know, and looking at their perspectives and ideas that they bring to the table. And, sometimes you like, for example, some of these like indigenous and native owned these little communities, that one contract can booster the whole community. Like
Yeah.
this whole little city is now, doing so much better economically because this large firm has, infused some capital into that region. So, looking at as the bigger players, your commitment to corporate social responsibility, to the communities in which you do have work. And, sometimes, yeah, you could keep all the work in house, but sometimes, you're doing so much more by giving just one or two FTEs on a project, and the wealth that you're bringing to little small areas that can use that capital infusion.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, I've worked for a few large consulting firms in my career, and you're right. I don't think any of them ever educated me just in general about, what does it mean when we're building a team and for this, for this work that we're trying to win, and what's the value proposition for a large to bring in a small, and and how can that help us and help them and help us all collectively. I think that is a educational aspect that's being missed at many places. Um, just similarly, the small businesses don't have a good way of articulating their value either, right? They need to figure that out as well. So I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah, and that's something I kind of help them with regularly. Like, hey guys, sometimes you're like, think of it like a kid. The kid knows they can do, this thing in baseball, but their mom would be like, well, hey, you do this really well, and you
Mm,
need to, showcase this part of it. Because sometimes the kid doesn't think they're just in that zone,
right.
doing whatever they're doing in baseball, batting, catching, whatever it is, and they're in that zone, and so they don't think when they're talking to coaches or talking to whoever about baseball, they don't really think about how to advocate for themselves.
Mm,
And so sometimes that's part of this role too, is having that conversation with that small and helping them advocate for themselves, helping them like see like, hey, you guys told me you did that. Why don't you highlight that a little bit more? Like, there isn't too many small businesses that have a top secret facility clearance.
right.
Push that out there. Or hey, you guys got CMMI for services and development. Not too many small
Mm,
businesses have both of those certs. Push that out there. Advocate that you have that, So sometimes they need, someone else that's kind of looking at the big picture to kind of remind them, like, hey, you guys do this or that, showcase that a little bit more. So there's that piece. And then talking about that small business, those small businesses, I think more education for them on the importance of doing their homework. Because a lot
mm,
of time, your small business advocate, we want to bring them in the room, right? To talk with the large corporate office about programs, potential opportunities, things like that. But they haven't done their homework. They don't know how to show up to these conversations. Maybe they can do the work, but when they show up to the meeting, they don't, they're rushing, they're doing 8 million things, they're not on camera, um they got spelling typos on their capability
mm.
statement that if you gave it to somebody else to proofread, they would have caught them, and your statement would have looked a lot more professional. So little things like that, or I feel like there needs to be more education for the smalls on the importance of how they show up, of doing their homework. Like, if you're a janitorial firm, why are you, unless you have some technology, why are you contacting a tech firm and saying, hey, we want to do business, right? Like, think, kind of finding your niche, finding other large janitorial firms and saying, hey, can we team with you? Hey, here's what we can, work with you on. So doing their homework around who they should reach out to in the way of large business partners, and understanding, hey, what does that large business do, what is their market position, where who are the key decision makers there, what agencies are they working with, are those agencies that I also want to work with,
Yeah.
or you get in the meeting and you're like, oh, I didn't know you guys did work with VA. I don't want to work with VA. Like, like do your research
Hmm.
before you come to these meetings so that you're in a good position to have these conversations. And when the large business is looking at you, they're like, they can see the synergy, they can see where you're a good fit, and then we can see the win-win going forward. But if you show up, you haven't done your homework, there isn't much I could advocate for you at this
Right. I mean, it's very much like an interview, right? You want to have your best
point.
foot forward. You want to be
Yeah.
at least sound knowledgeable, like you know what you're talking about. Fake
Yeah.
it till you make it if you have to, but be well enough knowledgeable that you're right, you make a great impression. And there is, of course, that aspect of personality and how well you're going to gel with their team and their perspective. Are they a tight down to business kind of place? Or are they a very relaxed kind of place? Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I've worked for a number of small companies that didn't make it, and I had to go find another job, and I was so sad. And some of it was in this area; they just couldn't figure out how to partner, or in a way that would help them win that work, or somebody who would be willing to come along and mentor them, because for whatever reason they weren't making a great impression.
Right. And sometimes you have people who are really good on the tech side, especially in the technology and engineering sector, right? They're really great with the engineering and really great with the tech, but they're not really good with selling it.
Mm, that
So
is
they
so
can
true.
they can do the work. They're amazing at doing the work. It's like the Einstein of this, but you don't want to put Einstein in the sales room.
Right, right.
Because he's going to get you in the weeds. You're going to forget why you're there. And you're going to be like, why are we doing business with this guy? Or what's happening with this guy?
Yeah.
So, part of that is, their education too. It's like, hey, this is not your strong suit.
Mm,
They have a lot of companies out there that do business development for small businesses in the GovCon space. Get with one of those, outsource your BD if that's not your strong suit. Stick in your space where you're good and you're strong at, and outsource the part that you're not.
mm. Very good. Very good suggestion. Very good uh information for vendor. You're right. I mean, oh gosh, one company I worked for, that was it. He couldn't do BD 100%. And he wouldn't relax enough to let somebody really do it.
Right,
And it was sad. I loved working for that company. We had a great contract, but we never got more than that one contract. So,
right.
yeah. Good advice. Good advice. So Ella, what's coming up for you here in the near future? What do you have going on?
Well, I'm kind of building out a little bit more, some processes, procedures, and things like that for the small business department here at SOSi, the small business office. I'm working on putting together a resource document for those companies that aren't quite ready to do business. Maybe they're only so far, all the work they've done is in the commercial side. They don't have any federal past performance. So they need to go and get some federal past performance, or, they need to kind of get started in the FedCon, GovCon space, maybe some consultants, folks that could help them if they're trying to get CMMC, if they're working on getting some of their ISO certifications, things like that, that they need to do to be able to work with us in certain areas of the business. I like to kind of give them a resource document. Like, here are some suppliers or consultant firms that can help you get those pieces together. And then you can come back once you have that together. Whether it's things like, hey, you want to do business with us international, but you don't know what the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is, right?
Right.
So, here's where you can get some of those tools and things under your belt before coming back to try and work with the large primes. So that's one thing I'm working on. Um, and just kind of trying to figure out different ways that I can bring value and continue to connect people in the technology space. That's also a passion of mine. So I love hearing this about small businesses that are working on different pieces of tech. But like you said, a lot of times we got this we figured out how to do this one thing really well. We got one contract to do it, and then we don't know where to go from here.
Yeah.
We'd like to go somewhere from here, but we're kind of stuck. So kind of helping them get unstuck and seeing whether if they can't do business with us, maybe there's one of my colleagues in the GovCon space that they be a better fit for, and being able to kind of broker those relationships as well. So it's kind of my next big thing.
Yeah, well, Ella, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love small businesses, and I love it when there are people out there who can be an advocate and a help for small businesses. So thank you so much for what you do, and thank you just for coming on the podcast and sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.